Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining us for Terror and Urban Myths. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you're enjoying the show. We really appreciate your support. Tonight, we're exploring the unsettling idea of what hides within the silence of the night.
Yeah, it's fascinating how easily we dismiss certain sounds at night, especially in familiar environments. Our brains seem programmed to filter out potential threats, lulling us into a false sense of security.
You're right. It's almost like we create a bubble of comfort, even when danger might be lurking just outside. We have a chilling story that perfectly illustrates this. It involves a woman in Providence, Rhode Island, who was home alone with her 4-year-old daughter. Late one night, she heard a noise outside but saw nothing when she looked out the window.
This seemingly insignificant event highlights a crucial point. She had recently come across a safety tip online about keeping car keys by the bed. The idea being you could trigger the car alarm to scare off an intruder.
It's like a mental note filed away for later use. But little did she know how soon that later would arrive. Just 30 minutes after drifting off to sleep, she was jolted awake by a loud bang. The room shook, and she instantly feared for her daughter's safety.
Imagine that heart-stopping moment, the immediate rush of adrenaline as you realize something is terribly wrong. She rushed to her daughter's room, thankfully finding her sleeping peacefully.
But the story doesn't end there. Another loud bang echoed through the house, and this time she knew she had to investigate. Armed with her car keys and the thought of that car alarm, she descended into the darkness of the lower floor.
It's that descent into the unknown that truly amplifies the fear. Each creaking step, each shadow takes on a sinister quality.
But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, the house was completely silent. The banging had stopped. There were no signs of an intruder, just an unsettling quiet.
It's almost as if our minds trick us into believing the danger has passed, allowing us to rationalize the situation and retreat back into our comfort zone.
And that's precisely what she did. She returned to bed, still uneasy, but clinging to the hope that it was nothing. However, the following day, a series of frantic calls from a friend revealed the horrifying truth.
What she initially dismissed as random noises were actually the sounds of her neighbor Ben being attacked and robbed in his own home just hours earlier.
The horrifying realization to think that the sounds she dismissed were actually cries for help masked by the silence of the night.
And the most chilling part is that Ben later revealed the intruders entered through his basement, meaning they were just a wall away from her, likely observing her before making their move.
Imagine the psychological impact of that knowledge, knowing that danger was so close that she was unknowingly being watched. The experience left her understandably traumatized, leading her to consider purchasing weapons for self-defense.
It speaks to the vulnerability we all feel, especially at night when the world outside seems to fade away, leaving us alone with our fears.
And that feeling of vulnerability isn't limited to our physical surroundings. Our next story delves into the digital world, where the silence of the night can be just as deceptive. A law student new to Los Angeles received a Facebook friend request from someone claiming to be her half-sister, someone she had never actually met.
This immediately raises red flags in today's age of online impersonation and catfishing. It highlights how easy it is to create a false identity and manipulate others in the digital realm.
The so-called half-sister extended an invitation to a dinner party at a local park. While excited about the prospect of meeting a family member, she couldn't shake a feeling of uneasiness about the location, especially considering it was in the evening.
That gut feeling, that intuition, is often our first line of defense against danger. It's that primal sense of unease that tells us something isn't right, even if we can't logically explain it.
And in this case, her intuition was spot on. She politely declined the invitation, choosing not to risk a potentially awkward or even dangerous encounter in an unfamiliar setting.
Later, her instincts were confirmed when she discovered that the park was located in a notoriously dangerous part of town known for gang activity and violent crime.
It's a chilling realization to think she could have walked right into a trap had she ignored that gut feeling.
And to make matters worse, further investigation revealed that the half-sister's profile was fake. Someone had been impersonating her online, likely with malicious intent.
It turned out this imposter had successfully scammed another friend with a fake ticket scheme, proving this wasn't just a harmless prank, but a calculated plot to exploit people.
The story serves as a stark reminder that the online world, with its cloak of anonymity, can be just as dangerous as the physical world, if not more so.
And the scariest part, we never truly know who or what lurks behind those seemingly innocent online profiles.
It's like a modern-day horror story unfolding in the digital shadows, where the silence of the night is replaced by the glow of a screen hiding sinister intentions.
Both of these stories, though vastly different in setting, share a common thread. They highlight the vulnerability we all feel, particularly when the world around us quiets down, whether it's the literal silence of the night or the deceptive quiet of the online world.
They serve as a reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, and it's often the things we dismiss or overlook that pose the greatest threat.
It's a thought-provoking notion, one that makes you question every creak in the floorboards and every friend request that pops up on your screen.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it? The idea that the very things we rely on for comfort and security, the familiar sounds of our homes, the connections we forge online, can be twisted into tools of deception and fear.
Absolutely. And what's even more unsettling is that these experiences can leave a lasting impact, shaping our perceptions and behaviors long after the initial event. We have another story that speaks to this, shared by a young woman who was just 16 at the time.
This one takes place in a seemingly ordinary setting, a neighborhood street, but quickly escalates into a terrifying ordeal. She was walking to a nearby store when she encountered a man in a suit standing inside an abandoned apartment building.
A man in a suit in an abandoned building. It's a jarring image, the kind that immediately sets off alarm bells in your mind.
Precisely. The incongruity of his appearance and the setting creates an instant sense of unease, a feeling that something is amiss. She chose to ignore him and continued on her way, but the encounter left her with a lingering feeling of discomfort.
That gut feeling, that instinctual sense of danger, is something we often dismiss or try to rationalize away. But this story highlights how crucial it can be to pay attention to those warning signs.
Indeed. And in this case, her instincts proved to be accurate. On her way back from the store, a white truck pulled up alongside her, and the same man from the abandoned building jumped out and grabbed her.
It's a terrifying scenario. The suddenness of the attack, the realization that you're in danger, and the feeling of helplessness as someone overpowers you. She was only 100 pounds at the time, but she fought back with everything she had, screaming and hitting him with her elbow. But it was no use.
It speaks to the raw terror of such an experience, the primal fear that kicks in when your safety is violated and your life is potentially at stake.
Just when the situation seemed hopeless, a woman known in the neighborhood for struggling with addiction witnessed the attack and came running to her rescue, yelling at the man to let her go.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of moments, unexpected heroes can emerge, often from the most marginalized segments of society. This woman, who likely faced her own daily struggles, didn't hesitate to put herself in harm's way to protect a stranger.
And, incredibly, the man actually listened. He released the young woman and sped off in his truck. Years later, the victim, now an adult, made a point of helping the woman who saved her, even paying for her to go to rehab.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the lasting impact of that one act of courage and compassion.
It speaks to the cyclical nature of kindness, how one act of bravery can ripple outward, inspiring others to pay it forward, creating a chain of positive change.
This next story takes us back to the online world, where the lines between reality and fantasy can become blurred, creating opportunities for manipulation and harassment. It involves a woman who enjoyed LARPing, live-action role-playing, a hobby that allows participants to step into fictional worlds and embody different characters.
LARPing offers a unique form of escapism, a chance to immerse oneself in a world of imagination and adventure. But as with any social activity, it's not without its potential dangers.
She typically attended LRP events with her friend and partner, finding it to be a fun and generally safe way to unwind and engage with like-minded individuals. However, at one particular event, she encountered a man named Greg, who seemed harmless enough at first, but quickly made her feel uncomfortable.
It's those subtle cues, those initial feelings of unease that often signal something is amiss. It's crucial to acknowledge and trust those instincts, even in environments designed for fun and camaraderie.
He approached her while she was setting up her tent, rambling on about a video game they both played. But he seemed oblivious to her attempts to politely disengage from the conversation.
It highlights the importance of recognizing and respecting social boundaries, something this individual clearly struggled with. His inability to pick up on her cues, or perhaps his deliberate disregard for them, created an uncomfortable and potentially threatening situation.
Later that evening, during a campfire game, he reappeared sitting beside her, despite her efforts to move away. He kept bringing up real-world topics in video games, violating the unspoken rules of decorum within the LRRP community.
It was as if he was intentionally trying to break down the barriers between the fictional world they were inhabiting and reality, a tactic that can be both unsettling and manipulative.
The next day, while she was out gathering resources for her character, he appeared again waiting for her on a trail. He asked her to get coffee sometime, but when she politely declined, he didn't accept her answer.
This persistence, coupled with his disregard for her boundaries within the LARP setting, suggests a disturbing pattern of behavior. It's a clear indication that he wasn't simply socially inept, but intentionally pushing the limits of acceptable conduct.
He grabbed her arm, making a suggestive comment about being alone in the woods, and at that point she panicked and ran back to the main village area. Thankfully, her friends and neighbors noticed her distress and immediately intervened, confronting Greg and telling him to back off.
It's heartening to see the community rallying around her, recognizing the potential danger and taking action to protect her. It underscores the importance of looking out for one another, especially in environments where vulnerability can be heightened.
But Greg didn't give up. Later that night, as she was walking back from the bathroom, he jumped out from behind a bush and pinned her against a tree. He accused her of leading him on and expressed frustration that she would hug and hold hands with other male participants, but not him.
His words reveal a disturbing sense of entitlement and a complete lack of respect for her autonomy. He was attempting to shift the blame onto her manipulating the situation to make it seem like she was somehow responsible for his inappropriate behavior.
She tried to explain that she was engaged to one of the men and that the others were simply friends, but he didn't care. He leaned in and asked for a kiss, suggesting that she could leave afterward.
His actions escalated from harassment to a clear attempt at sexual assault. It was a blatant disregard for her consent and a terrifying example of how quickly a situation can turn dangerous.
She yelled no and tried to push him away, but he was too strong. Thankfully, her friends and several neighbors heard her scream and came running to her rescue. They surrounded Greg, threatening him with their foam weapons if he didn't back off.
It's a surreal image, this group of LARPers using their fictional weaponry to defend their friend from a real-world threat. It speaks to the strength of their community bond and their willingness to protect one another even in the face of absurdity.
Greg tried to downplay the situation, claiming he was merely interrogating her for information about the game, but no one believed his flimsy excuse. The LRP organizer was called, and Greg was permanently banned from the event.
It's a satisfying conclusion to the story, seeing the community take decisive action to hold him accountable for his behavior. It sends a clear message that harassment and assault will not be tolerated within their space.
For the woman involved, it was a harsh reminder that even in seemingly safe and playful environments, danger can still lurk.
It underscores the importance of trusting our instincts, setting boundaries, and seeking support from our communities when those boundaries are violated.
And this brings us back to Providence, Rhode Island, where our first story took place. This time we hear from a woman new to the area who lived in a townhouse with her 4-year-old daughter.
It's interesting how certain locations seem to attract these unsettling events, almost as if the very air is charged with an undercurrent of unease. This woman had been in her new home for a while, getting to know her neighbors, including an older gentleman named Ben who lived next door.
That name sounds familiar. Wasn't Ben the victim in the first story, the one who was attacked in his own home?
Yes, it's the same men, and the fact that these two women, both new to the neighborhood, experienced such unsettling events in close proximity speaks to the idea that these occurrences can happen anywhere to anyone, regardless of location or demographics.
It's a sobering thought, that sense of vulnerability we all share, even in seemingly safe and quiet communities. This woman was in her bedroom reading a book when she heard a loud noise outside. She looked out the window but didn't see anything unusual.
And here again, we see how easily our minds dismiss seemingly insignificant events, especially when we're in familiar surroundings, lulled into a false sense of security. But this time, she had recently seen that same online safety tip about keeping car keys by the bed in case of an intruder.
It's almost as if that piece of information was planted in her mind, waiting to be activated when the time came. She put her keys by the bed, took some melatonin, and drifted off to sleep. But about 30 minutes later, she was jolted awake by a loud bang and a vibration that shook the entire room.
Imagine that disorienting moment, being ripped from sleep by a sound that defies explanation, your heart pounding as you struggle to make sense of what's happening. Her first thought was for her daughter, and she rushed to her room, relieved to find her sleeping soundly.
But the banging continued, and she knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. She grabbed her car keys, ready to activate that alarm if needed, and cautiously made her way downstairs to investigate.
That descent into the darkness, armed with only a set of keys and a sense of dread, must have been terrifying. Each step closer to the unknown amplified the fear, the silence only heightening the tension.
But when she reached the bottom of the stairs, the house was silent. There were no signs of forced entry, no indication of what caused the commotion.
It's that feeling of uncertainty, of not knowing whether to trust your instincts or dismiss them as paranoia, that can be so unsettling.
The next morning, she discovered that her neighbor Ben had been attacked and robbed in his own home the previous night. And she realized with chilling clarity that the sounds she heard, the bangs and vibrations, were likely the intruders breaking into Ben's house, which shared a wall with her own.
It's a horrifying realization to know that she was so close to danger, separated only by a thin wall, while she lay in bed trying to convince herself it was nothing. The fact that they entered through his basement directly on the other side of her closets explains why she felt the vibrations so strongly.
It's a stark reminder of how connected we are to our surroundings, how even the walls of our homes can't fully shield us from the darkness that exists just beyond them.
And as if the realization wasn't terrifying enough, Ben revealed that the intruders had seen her looking out the window before they walked in. They were watching her, assessing the situation, waiting for their moment to strike.
Imagine the psychological impact of that knowledge, to know that you are being observed, targeted, while unknowingly going about your evening routine. It shatters any illusion of safety and leaves you feeling perpetually vulnerable.
This experience understandably left her traumatized, leading her to purchase a stun gun and pepper spray for protection. The intrusion, both literal and psychological, had violated her sense of security, forcing her to confront the reality that danger can lurk even in the most familiar of places.
It's a chilling reminder that the silence of the night, often associated with peace and tranquility, can also mask sinister intentions and lurking threats. It's a time when our senses are dulled, our guard is down, and our vulnerability is heightened.
These stories serve as a cautionary tale, urging us to be vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to recognize that even in the quietest of moments, danger can be lurking just around the corner, both in the physical world and the digital realm.
Thank you for joining us for another chilling exploration of terror and urban myths. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. Your support means the world to us.
And remember, as you settle in for the night, listen carefully to the silence. It may be telling you more than you realize.